I fell in love with science fiction when I was a kid in the 50s. 50s was a golden age of giant radioactive monsters, sci-fi, and things coming from outer space. And those are the kind of movies that I fell in love with. Horror also, but sci-fi I was big time into it. It conquered the world, them, This Island Earth, War of the Worlds, The Creeping Unknown, Quatermass 2. I mean, it goes, all the B movies were made back then. I loved them. I believed every one of them. I believed every rubber monster. I was just hooked. There was a movie in the 56 called Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original one, that had a little bit of politics in it. Just a touch, just a hair. Although the director claims no, but I think it was, they were talking about the Red Menace. A lot of these movies were talking about communism is the invader, was the other, the creature. But I didn't care about that. I cared about the monsters.
That's like pouring perfume on a pig.
To be clear, it wasn't just a short story, there was a comic book. I think it was Eclipse Comics, as I remember, that I found in a comic book store. That was it was based on 8 O'Clock in the Morning by Ray Nelson. And it had a kind of a traditional 50s premise, which is that in this case, in the short story and in the comic book, a guy goes to a hypnotism show. And the guy on the stage says, "Wake up," and our hero does, and realizes that in addition to human beings, the world is populated with these creatures. And then it goes on from there. And I don't know, it just spurred me to start thinking about a kind of science fiction movie, a grade B science fiction movie, frankly, because we didn't have a whole lot of money, that I could use as a vehicle to take on Reaganism.
It's a new morning in America. Fresh, vital. The old cynicism is gone. We have faith in our leaders.
I'm a child of the 60s. I grew up in a countercultural movement. Rock and roll, drugs, sex. It was a different time, and there's a lot of rebellion going on. Well, what I didn't know was that there was a giant backlash waiting to happen out there in America. And I was unaware of this, living in my own world, until Jimmy Carter kind of came along with these great intentions and was maligned and hated because he dared speak the truth to us, which is, we're using too much energy, we worship consumerism, all these things, the malaise speech. So Ronald Reagan came along, and Reagan we had him as governor of California before the country had him. He was this kind of amiable actor, politician who just had the dumbest ideas. And so Reagan got in, was elected because of this backlash I'm talking about. And his policies, poverty went up, homelessness went up, he destroyed the unions. He began to attack liberalism. He began to attack Roosevelt liberalism. And I hated that. My big quandary was whether to tell this from the story of the middle class or the working class. I could have told it from the middle class point of view of somebody who works at a TV station, for instance, and something strange is going on and they discover the truth. And it's happening through that TV station. Or I could tell the story through the working poor. Somebody who's trying to make a living, trying to support his family, but is out of luck. So I went that direction because I hadn't seen a movie like that. I hadn't seen a movie about the poor.
Look! Look at them, they're everywhere!
I don't know, maybe they can see.
Nobody had done anything like this back then. I was involved with a comedy for a while, earlier in the 80s, and didn't get made for a variety of reasons. And in that movie, I wanted to critique the 80s and the same sort of thing, but the producers weren't having it. They just didn't see that, not in this film. So I thought, well, fuck you, I'll do it in my own movie. So I did.
What's your problem?
Sandy King designed the aliens on a napkin. Look, you saw them in black and white except for the very end. They had sort of metallic eyes, and they looked alien, you know. And they were simple to do. We had one mask, and I have to reveal to you that only one actor played all the aliens. That's not man Jeff Amata. Everyone, male and female.
I've got one that can see.
A deal was put together with Alive Films, Universal, and Carolco. Alive Films handled the supplementary market, Universal was domestic, and Carolco was foreign distributors. And they were so low budget, everybody won. So it was perfect for me, and I had final cut, and I agreed to make them for very little money.
All the sex and violence on the screen has gone too far for me. Filmmakers like George Romero and John Carpenter have to show some restraint.
One of the things I learned in film school is that you have to fight for some things that are really important to you. And one of the things that I decided, or I learned, was that my vision is worth fighting for. I'll fight for that.
Excuse me.
Just survive.
You know, you look like your head fell on the cheese dip back in 1957.
I met Roddy at WrestleMania 3. I was a wrestling fan as a kid, another skinny kid who loved wrestling. And I knew what wrestling was, but I still loved it. It was fun. I met him there. I looked at him. I thought, man, you know, it's not his character that he plays, but he has a scarred, weathered face. I think he might be able to pull this off as a working guy. And so I cast him.
Last place of employment.
Denver, Colorado. Worked there for 10 years. And things just seemed to dry up.
Nobody said much, but I had the feeling they were a little worried about it. You know, what is he doing? Why get a wrestler? But I had a lot of faith in him after I met him and talked to him. And it had a basis for communication. We became good friends, so it worked out.
I've had a rough couple of days.
Well, Roddy had a briefcase that he let me borrow over the Christmas holidays, I remember. Before he would go to matches, and on Saturdays in wrestling, they would do the interviews. They just one after another. And he would write lines for himself to say in an interview that he's gonna meet so-and-so and I'm gonna do this. It's just part of wrestling. It's really fun. But he was going to wrestle Playboy Buddy Rose at some match somewhere. And he came up with, he wrote it down for himself. I'm here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum. And he said, use these. And so I did.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. Close the door.
Meg's great. I love Meg. I loved her face. I loved her eyes and her cool ability to get across things as an actress. Meg had done a movie that really impressed me called Ticket to Heaven. It was about a religious cult, and she was the kind of cult figure. She did very little in the movie, but she was so magnetic looking. And she plays a conflicted character, so I thought it's perfect.
Don't do it.
And she was easy to cast. So was Keith David, who I'd worked with in The Thing, was just wonderful.
Leave it alone, man. It ain't none of my business, ain't none of yours.
Again, you're casting somebody to be working poor. You're casting somebody who's a working guy. And Keith, even though he's Juilliard educated and as far away from a working guy as you could get, you know, he looks the part and he can act it. And Keith's a wonderful guy.
Look, you crazy mother.
Put these on.
Hey, stay away from me.
I'm telling you, you dumb son of a...
The fight. Well, we had Roddy in the movie. And when I was writing the script, I planned this fight out. And the big thing for me was getting enough time to shoot it. So what I did was I wrote, the fight begins, And then for about 4 or 5 pages, I was blank except for the fight continues. The fight continues. So I had the time to build in the schedule. And got Jeff Amata, legendary Hollywood stuntman, and he and Keith and Roddy worked in the backyard of the office that I had at the time. And they designed this entire fight. And I just looked in occasionally. And I did want a suplex involved. Roddy did a suplex in the end of the fight. But it was pretty much up to them. And Roddy had described to me that if you want a really good fight in the ring or for a movie, it takes about a month and a half to rehearse it, to get it really good, so that you're making contact. So you're actually making contact with, instead of missing in Hollywood fights. So that's what they did. They were hitting each other, and it was great. Downtown Los Angeles, we shot the film, and amazing locations down there. You know, Skid Row. We found a little plot of land that you could look in one direction and see downtown Los Angeles looming above it, which seemed perfect for us. Horror movies have bleak endings today. I'm not sure. The audience doesn't necessarily like it. The audience hates ambiguity. They want to know what happens. They want to know definitively what happens. The audience didn't like it in The Thing. In Halloween, yeah, because it was part of the theme of him being like a vapor, disappears in the night. But in The Thing, they wanted to know, well, is he a thing? Is Kurt a thing or not?
But in this one, at least you end on a joke, so it's kind of uplifting.
Oh, you mean this? Yeah.
Hey, what's wrong, baby?
Number one with a bullet. I don't know after that. I didn't care because we'd made our money. Keith David has a theory that the government stepped in and did something. This is such bullshit. No, they didn't. It's good. I mean, I enjoy the movie. It's silly parts to it. There are a couple things I wish I could change now, but every movie's that way. I see it and I think, oh, what the fuck was I thinking? All this comes back to some basic sci-fi and horror literature, and we go back to Lovecraft. At some point in the Lovecraft stories, you lift the veil on reality, and you see the Lovecraftian mythos behind it. And that's what I did. Let me lift the veil for you to see what's going on. And the veil is the Republicans were aliens who were just consuming and getting us to become consumers. And all the things that went along with the 80s. I would like to point out to you that the 80s have never ended. They're still with us and roaring and going crazy. Almost in 2008 and 2009, we almost lost it all. Everything almost collapsed. We're still in the grip of the recession. Coming out of it, which is good news. But I fear the next time it won't be a recession. It'll be a depression, and then we're in for a world of hurt.